Hello guys, welcome back to our YouTube channel. In this video we are gonna see, what if Naruto was the god of Shinigami and got Harem? Part 1. Huge shout out to Unlimited Blade Works for this story. If you want more awesome fan fiction like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. So without wasting any time, let's get into the video. Naruto sighed, standing in front of the thriving village of Uzumaki, the moonlight streaming down on his unmoving form. It had been 3 weeks since he got here, 3 weeks since he had been blasted over 20 years into the past, and he had just one thing to say about it, Takami. Still, it wasn't without its bright sides. After all, he did have the chance to save his parents' lives now, so long as he didn't screw the timeline up, too much at least. Naruto closed his eyes, red coat billowing in the wind. His chakra flared as he pushed it towards his eyes. The fox, or vixen as she preferred to be called, was strangely silent. It seemed even she was taking this seriously. It was a good thing he still had her, otherwise he could well have been clueless at the time of Whirlpool's destruction, and then where would he be? Naruto had decided the moment he found himself in the past to save his parents' lives, but to do that he needed to be close to them. Considering the year at the moment, they were both around 12 right now compared against his 16, that was going to be easier said than done. So he needed a plan. His original thought had been to try and enlist as a shinobi of Konoha. That fell through when he realized one thing. His mother, Kushina, was a Jinchuriki. They would likely monitor her far too closely for Naruto to get anywhere near her. Minato was out thanks to Jiraiya taking him on as an apprentice. The Toad Sennin was far too observant to let him get close. Then it hit him like a bolt of lightning, a way if not to keep them both safe, then to keep Kushina safe. Naruto figured that his dad didn't need it after all. Jiraiya may have been a super pervert, but he was also crazy strong. Not to mention, with Naruto's knowledge of future events, he would be indispensable to his mother, along with being the best person to help train her in the use of Akane's chakra. So his plan was to become her Jonin sensei, just one small itty bitty problem. No way in hell was Konoha going to let him, no matter how strong he was, be her sensei. At this point in time they did not know him. He was an unknown factor, a wild card. No one was dumb enough to let someone like that near a Jinchuriki. So he needed credentials as well as a way to solidify himself as a friend. Akane had come up with the answer. Save Yuzu from destruction. The act would make the Uzumaki clan indebted to him and solidify the fact he was in fact a friend to both Yuzu and the Hidden Leaf. Fortunately, the amount of ninjas sent to attack Yuzu was small in number, unsurprising really, as the village only numbered around 500 shinobi all told. If the figures that Akane remembered were right, then Iwa only sent around 1500 troops. He could fight that many. Naruto's eyes snapped open as he concentrated on the shoreline, his eyes glowing a vibrant purple as he activated his Rinnegan, the legendary Taijutsu, glowing ominously in the night. They would be coming any minute now. Naruto clenched and unclenched his hands. He saw them, hundreds of small figures sprinting across the water. Naruto smiled and held 2 fingers up in front of his face. His smile turned sadistic as he copied one of the most disgusting, if ingenious, men he had ever had the misfortune to meet. You know, boys, art is a blast, Katsu. The exploding tags under the water went off. The explosions tore off the invaders' body parts and mangled their limbs. Red began to pollute the pure blue sea. Naruto couldn't help but smile at the devastation his attack caused. The village of Yuzu would not fall this day. Its destruction would not cause his cause and pain like it did in his own timeline. Even though Kushina wasn't his mother and she didn't know who he was, Naruto still felt like he should defend Yuzu. Though he would be lying if he didn't admit that he had more than a passing personal motive here. After all, he never really had a home in Konoha. His ancestral home of Yuzu had been destroyed before he had been born. Part of him was defending Yuzu, simply so the him that would be born later would have a home, even if he failed to save his parents. Naruto extended his arms. He could hear the sounds of the Yuzu shinobi closing in from behind him. He needed to end this and fast. Shinra Tensei. Naruto commanded, sending a wall of compressed gravity at the ninjas in front of him. The attackers' bodies were thrown backwards like rag dolls, his attack smashing them through the trees on the shoreline. Breaking bones and killing most of the attacking ninja instantly. Most if not all of the survivors of his attack had ended in the water unconscious. It would lead to them drowning. Naruto could hear the Yuzu shinobi getting closer. By the looks of things, he had very few enemies left alive on the battlefield. He raised his arms again, pushing even more chakra into his arms, bending and compressing the gravity in front of his hands. Shinra Tensei, the blonde, declared, launching the wave of gravity again. It shredded through the remaining Iwa forces, and Naruto smiled as he felt the Yuzu shinobi behind him. Turning around, the blonde smiled at the man behind him. Sorry to ask, he said lightly. But would you mind catching me? He said before falling over in a dead faint. The Yuzu shinobi that caught him chuckled. He was not quite sure if the man was a friend or a foe, but given what he had just done to their attackers, he would make sure that the Hokage would hear him out. Naruto groaned as he woke up. His headache was killing him. The blonde looked up, his blue eyes saw a white ceiling. He breathed in the smell of antiseptic. Naruto sighed. He could already see where this was going, but he looked at the bed, standard hospital issue. Naruto sighed. Even after being displaced in time, it seemed he still hated being in hospital. As such, he did the one thing that made any sense at the time. "Tuck me." He groaned, allowing his head to fall back onto the pillow. Naruto heard the distinctive sound of wood scraping on tile and looked to the door. Anbu, or whatever the Whirlpool Village's version of them was, walked through the door with handcuffs. Naruto groaned again as he saw them. "Tuck me," sideways. Naruto amazingly enough actually did allow himself to be handcuffed before being hauled in front of the man who called himself the Uzukage. Though Naruto did suspect that being called that was more a nickname or form of respect than anything else, after all only the 5 great countries' leading shinobi had right to the title of Kage. The man was tall, slightly over 2 meters and was dressed in battle armor, reminiscent of the Sho Daime and Nidaime Hokages. He also had violet blue eyes, something Naruto had always found rather exotic even on his mother. The man sat down before him, a stern look on his face, as if evaluating Naruto's worth. "So why don't you tell me why you decided to help my village and we can work from there?" The man proposed, not bothering to give his name. Naruto sighed. Oh boy, this was going to be a headache. The next few hours were spent with Naruto explaining to the man who called himself Uzukage what he had done in the battle. He also managed to convince him to undo the chakra restrictions on him in order to show the man his Rinnegan. Fortunately, it also allowed him to slip a hypnotic suggestion into the man's head using the Jinjutsu of Uchiha Shisuke Otoamatsukamailet. Distinguished heavenly gods. The suggestion being that he be rewarded with a few requests for his services to Yuzu. Requests that the Uzukage would do his best to honor. It was one of the times that Naruto was glad to be in Uzumaki. Kodomatsukami would normally only be usable once every 10 years. However, with a body like his with DNA similar to the Senju clan, Naruto could cut down that time to once a month. The Uzukage smiled at the young man in front of him. "Well then, let me thank you behalf of Yuzu for saving our village. I will be putting in a request for additional support to Konoha." Naruto smiled at that. It was just the opening he needed. "Now then, I can't just let such a good deed go unrewarded. I can grant you almost anything, bar being Uzukage." The man laughed. Naruto just smiled a little more. Asking for something like that would just be egotistical, though he was sure it had happened. Naruto bowed his head to the Uzukage. "Uzukage-sama, I have only one request I would like granted." Naruto asked, trying to sound as humble as possible. "I would like to be the Jonin sensei of Uzumaki Kushina when she starts her ninja career." The Uzukage's eyes narrowed before he beeped his head to the side and smiled. Naruto almost smirked. It seemed Kodomatsukami was doing its job. "Well, you would need to be a ninja of either Konoha or Yuzu for that, but it is easily solved. Narukami Naruto, I hereby instate you as a Jonin level ninja of Uzugakure no Sato." The Uzukage smiled before unleashing a wave of killer intent. "Though if anything, and I mean anything, happens to my daughter Kushina, I will have your head. Do you understand me?" Naruto nodded vigorously. The man in front of him was his grandfather. It was taking everything he had not to cry in happiness and hug the man. His family and the man would never even know. Naruto smiled at the Uzukage. "So then, when do I leave for Konoha?" Naruto asked. The Uzukage smiled. "Really that eager to get started?" The man laughed. "As far as I know, the team placements are in 1 week. I will send a carrier Paigan in advance informing them of your impending arrival. More importantly, of my desire for you to be Kushina's sensei. However, there is a good chance that the bird could be killed before it reaches Konoha, so I'll give you a copy of the letter as well. Shouldn't take more than an hour." Naruto smiled at his grandfather. "Okay then, I'll just hang around here till then. Oh, by the way, I never got your name." The Uzukage laughed, shaking his head from side to side. "Oh, how rude of me. Call me Dad, Uzumaki Dad, Naruto-san." Naruto nodded in acceptance as the Uzukage walked from the room. Naruto stretched out his awareness and found he was alone. He smiled, bringing his hands up in a ram seal. Kai. Naruto activated the last part of the Kodomatsukami he had implanted in his grandfather. The Genjutsu's final trap activated, destroying all memories of his Rinnegan. Naruto smiled. Sometimes it really was nice when everything went to plan. Naruto sighed. It was only 3 days to Konoha by foot. He had managed to stretch that to a week. No way in hell was he going to be able to put his Jiji under a Kodomatsukami-induced illusion. Oh well, not everything in life was easy. A smile found its way to his face as the great gates of Konoha came into view. Naruto began to take stock of the village. The Third Ninja World War hadn't started yet, at least. In his own timeline or dimension, he really hadn't quite figured that part out yet. The destruction of Yuzu had been the trigger for the beginning of the war. The longest of the 4 wars, spanning 12 years in total, including armistice and some backdoor Cold War politics. All up, there was a grand total of around 2 years in armistice treaties and demobilization, probably why the war lasted as long as it did. Naruto shook his reminiscing of history off. He stopped to consider, is it really history? Well, from his perspective it was. But it hadn't actually happened yet, so oh hell, he'd think about it later. He yawned as he walked into the hidden village and was immediately accosted by the Anbu. Naruto-san, we have been expecting you, please follow us to the Hokage. Naruto nodded as an Anbu operative placed a hand on his shoulder. He knew who he would see in the Hokage chair, Tsurutobi Hiruzen, his Jiji. Naruto just hoped he had it in him not to break down and cry. The Anbu made the hand seal for the Shunshin, and Naruto felt the world blur around him before he was standing in the middle of a very familiar office. The man behind the desk was dressed in the traditional robes of the Hokage, brown hair and dark eyes, though Naruto did note he was still smoking his ever-present pipe. It took everything he had not to break down and cry before hugging the old man. He never got to say goodbye before Orochimaru killed him after all. Tsurutobi Hiruzen studied his newest ninja carefully. Dad had spoken highly of the man despite his young age. Now he could see why. The man was perfectly balanced, every angle ready to be attacked or defended from. You couldn't copy that. Holding your body like that only came from a lifetime of life and death battles. The young man looked no older than his mid to late teens. What kind of life had he lived for him to be able to hold a battle-ready stance subconsciously at all times? Before anything else, I would like to ask, did you have a good trip to Konoha, Naruto-san? He inquired politely. He didn't trust the team completely despite Dad's message, but there was nothing wrong with being polite. I did, Hokage-sama. I must say that Hai no Kuni is a lovely country this time of year. Naruto replied just as politely. Hiruzen smiled in acceptance of Naruto's statement before frowning at the young, but obviously well-trained shinobi. Now then, why do you want to train Uzumaki Kushina? Naruto sighed. This is going to be a long day, he lamented internally. Kushina was almost bouncing off the walls as she walked down the hall of the academy. She was a rather pretty girl with long red hair and a rounded face. Violet blue eyes shining with life added to her allure. It was today she couldn't believe it. Today she would become a genin and likely beat up the dumbfasses that called her tomato one last time. She wondered who her Jonin sensei would be. Would she be paired with Mikoto-chan? Kushina hoped, so she and the young Uchiha worked well together. Kushina wasn't really one for ninjutsu, preferring Tai and Kenjutsu to that particular branch of the ninja arts. But her chakra chains more than made up for her lack of ninjutsu and would allow her to hold an enemy down as Mikoto fried them with a Kaiten jutsu. Kushina made a mental note to learn some basic wind ninjutsu to complement her friend. Giddy with excitement, the redhead threw the door open, a million-watt smile plastered over her face. Seeing her excitement mirrored on her friend's face only heightened her desire for her career as a genin to begin. Then she felt it, a chill that sent her almost into convolutions with its malicious and murderous intent. Senju Nawaki and Uchiha Mikoto also felt this ungodly chill that seemed to come from the devil himself and shivered in fear. Oddly enough, this happened at the same time as Namikaze-Uzumaki Naruto, or as he went by now Narukami Naruto, was planning out his torture training methods for his new genin team. Naruto was positively giddy. Oh hell yes, he could save two of his precious people and help out a third. It had been an uphill battle in convincing the third Hokage that his intentions were pure, but he eventually won the old go-around. Naruto made a quick mental note to keep an eye on Danzo. The moment the crippled bastard tried anything he would die, slowly. Naruto looked at the door to room 203. Naruto smiled fondly. His memories of Iruka flooding his vision before he brought his leg back and quite literally kicked the door off its hinges. Leaving it to land with a loud crash, Naruto walked into the room with a large smile on his face, while everyone inside the room looked at him with wide disbelieving eyes. Okay, Uchiha Mikoto, Senju Nawaki and finally Uzumaki Kushina. I am your new Jonin sensei, meet me on the roof in 5 or so help me, I will send your fasces back to the academy so fast it will make your head spin. They didn't need to be told twice, running straight out the door and not looking back. Naruto smiled, gave the teacher a quick wink and a smile before walking after his new students at a leisurely pace. The teacher picked his jaw up off the floor. Team assignments weren't till after lunch. It wasn't even 8 AM yet, hell he hadn't even gotten to give his congratulatory speech. The 3 genin were ecstatic to be out of that classroom. They were told that their sensei wouldn't pick them up till after lunch. Looked like they got lucky he was early. But could this guy really be a good sensei? He barely looked older than them. Naruto smiled at the 3 in front of him. He hoped he could torture, he meant train, them well enough. As one, the 3 genin of the newly created Team 5 shivered, like a malicious god was about to bring down swift and horrible retribution on them. Okay then, tell me your likes, dislikes, hopes, dreams and any fun facts or hobbies you have. Naruto said cheerfully. He would not pull a Kakashi when it came to be his turn to give an introduction, no matter how tempting it may be. You're up first, Tomato-chan. Naruto said, pointing quickly at his miniature mother. A tick mark appeared on Kushina's head. Who the hell are you calling a tomato, you bastard? The fiery redhead yelled, charging him, rage and embarrassment clear on her face. Naruto sighed. Oh yeah, he was going to have to rein her temper in, though he would admit he found it cute. The newly appointed Whirlpool Konoha Jonin disappeared in a burst of speed, reappearing behind of the newly appointed Uzumaki Genin, and promptly placed a kunai to her jugular. The Genin on the roof froze. Naruto dug the kunai into Kushina's pale white skin a little, not enough to draw blood, but enough to make his point. Considering the way her face was paling even from behind, he could tell he was doing his job. I am going to say this once and only once. Naruto said in a low tone, causing a shiver to go up his Genin's spines. You are Genin and I am a Jonin. The next time you try something as fucking stupid as attacking me head on, I will hurt you. You are a ninja, not a samurai. Do not bring a misplaced sense of honor into your fights. If you were going to attack me, then wait until my guard is down and poison me or backstab me, because otherwise you will not even be able to touch me. Remember the Genin. Naruto hissed into Kushina's ear, causing the girl to shiver in fright. Naruto breathed out deeply. Kushina, he said in a far kinder tone. If you were on the battlefield and let your temper get the best of you like that, you would die. Do you understand me? Naruto took the kunai away from her throat, and the redhead nodded. I called you Tomato-chan just now to see how you would react, and if your temper is going to be a danger to your teammates, and it is. I will not do it again, but please get your temper under control, or else you will lead to someone getting killed. The redhead looked dejected before looking away ashamed. Naruto gestured for her to sit down. Okay, then let's try this again. I'll go first this time. My name is Narukami Naruto. My likes include making new jutsu and my friends. His heart clenched at the mention of his friends. He would never see them again. My dislikes include any moron who can't tell the difference between a scroll and the kunai sealed into it. His Genin all looked a little lost at that. And people who mistreat and look down on the Jinchuriki simply for being different. Kushina looked shocked when he said that. My hope is to one day see my friends again and maybe meet that special someone. I currently have no dreams for myself. Naruto smiled at his Genin and pointed to Kushina. You're up, Kushina-chan. He said, smiling, as Kushina's face lit up like a Christmas tree. My name is Uzumaki Kushina. My likes are Makoto-chan, Yuzugakur, Kyuinjutsu, and the food of the gods ramen. My dislikes are my nickname and people who make fun of me for being from outside of Hai no Kuni. My hobby is cooking and my dream. Kushina took a deep breath in. Naruto's instincts honed by years of being around Sakura kicked in. In less time than it took for the three Genin to blink, Naruto had earplugs in Makoto, Nawaki and his own ears, just as Kushina screamed. To be the first female Hokage, Dadabane. Naruto removed his earplugs, and the other two did the same, looking at him gratefully. So that's your dream, huh? Naruto said softly. Kushina nodded in a determined manner, and he smiled. Well then, I guess as your sensei it's my job to help you get there. Then you'll be training hard. Make sure you're ready for it. Kushina just nodded almost dumbly. Most people just made fun of her dream when she told them. He said he would help her get there. Her face sported a small blush. You're up next, Nawaki-kun, Naruto said, pointing at the Senju heir. Nawaki smiled. Finally someone who didn't call him Senju-sama. He was a person, damn it, not just a name. My name is Senju Nawaki. My likes are my older sister Tsunade, ninjutsu, and learning more about the Senju history. Oh, and pranks, can't forget pranks. My dislikes are the elder council, traitors and people who judge others before getting to know them. My hobby. Well, I guess that would be pranking people. My dream is to become Hokage and protect everyone in Konoha. He finished smiling brightly. Naruto chuckled. Looks like I'll have to train you and Kushina hard if I've got two Hokage candidates on the team. I'm only going to say it once, though my training methods are a little insane. Be ready. Nawaki nodded, looking a little frightened that even his sensei admitted freely that his methods were insane. Finally, you're up, Makoto-chan. Naruto finished smiling brightly. The raven-haired girl nodded. My name is Uchiha Makoto. My likes include Kushina-chan, Konoha, Kaitenjutsu and sweet things. My dislikes are arrogance. Naruto barely managed to stifle his laughter that an Uchiha of all people disliked arrogance. Moreover, this was Sasuke's mother. That was irony at its finest. Perverts, rapists, and the Uchiha Elder Council. My hobby, well, I never really thought about it. Makoto finished sheepishly. Kushina, Nawaki and Naruto just chuckled. My dream is to have a happy family with some children and die long before they do. She finished with a smile. Naruto had to hold in a grimace. She had gotten her wish in his timeline, just in the most disturbing way possible. He dusted off his hands while standing up and looking at the three Genin. Okay then, time for your real Genin test, and before you ask, yes, there is another test you need to take. The test you guys took in the academy was just to see if you had the capacity to become Genin, and you obviously all do. This test is to see if you deserve to be Genin. He took out a pair of bells and tied them to his new Yuzugakur Jonin vest. Your test is to get these bells from me before sundown today. Any and all forms of attack are allowed, and the only restrictions are that you have to stay inside Konoha or the training grounds, exempting ground 44, go." Naruto disappeared in a poof of smoke, revealing him to be a shadow clone. It took about 5 minutes for the genin to work out what he meant and immediately ran in opposite directions to find him. Iwaki shivered, he could feel that a predator was watching him, just waiting for him to show some kind of weakness before striking. It had been 3 weeks since Kushina, Mikoto and he had passed the true genin exam and been thrown into this hell that their jonin sensei called training. Now that wasn't to say he didn't think Naruto wasn't a good guy, he actually had a lot of respect for the older blonde. But his training methods were insane. What kind of monster would do this to children? He felt his back press up against his 2 teammates. Is he gone?" Mikoto asked in a fearful tone. They had been dodging surprise attacks and exploding clones all day, their nerves were at breaking point. No, he's not," Kushina stated, sounding more than a little frightened. "He watching us, waiting for our guard to slip." The 3 genin were standing back to back watching the forest as if it was a monster waiting to devour them. "Waiting for your guard to slip?" came the honestly confused voice. "Who said it hadn't already?" The cheerful voice asked, right from the center of their formation. Nawaki turned around, first kunai leading. Naruto's boot met the Senju heir's sternum and sent him flying, cracking a rib. Mikoto jumped back to get more room and quickly found a fist buried in her gut, doubling her over and causing her to vomit. Naruto spun, raising his leg to deliver a brutal axe kick to Kushina's head. They would thank him for this later. He knew the third ninja war would start soon. As much as he hated himself for doing this to them, they would need this training to survive a hell like that. Naruto gave all his genin a quick once-over. They were good, very good. He had made the right choice doing nothing but training for 3 weeks. His genin slowly managed to haul themselves off the floor, all of them coughing up blood. Naruto smiled at them before taking a scroll out of his vest. "Okay then, Team 5, great job today. I am happy to tell you that tomorrow you have your first C-ranked mission," Naruto said, smiling at them. The genin's jaws dropped. A C-ranked mission. They hadn't even done 1D rank yet, they took it all back. Their sensei was awesome. Naruto smiled and gestured them all to come in closer. "Okay then, the job's simple, just a guard and escort mission to Kawa no Kuni. Shouldn't take more than a week, pack well, and make sure you take at least enough equipment for a B rank or A rank if you can afford it, no harm in being careful." With his mission history, they were probably going to end up doing an A rank. He hated his luck sometimes. Naruto vanished in a puff of smoke to reappear over by the entrance to the training ground. "So then why are you all still standing there?" Naruto asked, pointing at the 3. Then they heard it, the telltale sound of an exploding tag. Nawaki spun around. "Cow!" he screamed, jumping away from the model cow covered in explosives, an action that was quickly mirrored by Mikoto and Kushina. The cow exploded, sending them all skidding across the grass of the training ground, with minor burn marks marring their forms. Naruto smiled at his downed team. "See you at the front gate at 9 tomorrow," he said cheerfully, before walking off whistling a jaunty tune. The 3 genin took it all back. Their sensei was in phase. Naruto sighed, hanging his head. It was 9:10. Where the hell were they? Hell, even the client was late. The undercover Uzumaki sighed again before looking up at the clouds and felt his body relax. So this is why Shikamaru found this so enjoyable. His heart ached. His friends, they were dead. He wouldn't see them ever again. Even if they were born in this world, they wouldn't be the same people, so he would never see them again. His hand wandered to his right eye and Naruto smirked. Itachi's gift to him as the inheritor of his will was inside this right eye. The determination of the man who killed almost every Uchiha for the sake of Konoha was inside his eye. As was the will of a man who thought himself a god and wanted nothing more than world peace. Flashback. Bansho Tenin, the resurrected corpse of Nagato, spoke out, drawing Naruto irresistibly towards the now controlled Ito Tensei zombie. Nagato reached back his hand and plunged his fingers into Naruto's right eye before tearing it out. Blood splattered over the ground and marred Nagato's face as Naruto screamed in pain. His world was filled with pain, his eye was gone. His eye, oh god. Naruto choked down a scream of pain. He wasn't out of the fight, yet he still had QB's chakra cloak. He lifted his leg and slammed it into Nagato's sternum. His chakra cloak was immediately ripped off, leaving his leg bare. Damn it, he'd forgotten about that stupid ability. He came down from above, aiming to slash off Nagato's arm. The Rouge Uzumaki didn't even bat an eyelash. "Shinra Tensei," he commanded, sending Naruto and B flying away from him and through several trees. The controlled Nagato placed his hand on the ground. "Uchiha no Jutsu. Yama no Ue." Monstrous construct rose from the ground, the kanji for king inscribed upon its head. Naruto felt his breathing quicken as he observed it with his remaining eye. He had summoned it again, the thing that gave back the people of Konoha their lives, the king of hell. Itachi chose that moment to get B and him to safety, pulling them into the embrace of Susanoo. Nagato didn't even look surprised. The Rinnegan wielder simply raised his hand to the sky. Chibaku Tensei, the sphere of black gravity, soared into the sky and tore the earth asunder, pulling it into the sky. Itachi gritted his teeth. "Have you two seen this before?" he asked calmly. Naruto nodded to the older Uchiha. "I have. Let's just say if that thing manages to hit us, we're done for. It took me using 8 of QP's tails to be pulled out," he admitted. The reanimated Uchiha nodded at the younger man's statement. "We'll have to bring it down using overwhelming force. If we all use our most powerful range jutsu, we may have a chance. But that is only if we aim for that black ball at its core. If we can't hit that, we are going to die." Naruto and B nodded. A familiar ringing sound began over Naruto's right hand, while B transformed into his full 8-tailed state. The three breathed in deeply. Naruto pulled his arm back. Tunin. Rasen Shuriken. Isaka no Magatama. Ajudama. The three called out the name of their respective attacks as they soared towards the growing moon, hitting it head-on and causing an explosion of almost cataclysmic proportions. The result was the surrounding area being leveled to the point maps would have to be redrawn to show the aftermath of the battle. Nagato prepared to renew his attack. The Ito Tensei construct looked down, a glowing katana impaling him through the stomach. Nagato smiled at being released from his servitude before looking at Itachi. "Thanks, I guess I owe you one." The Uchiha smiled at the former god's words of thanks. "Anything you want to say, Nagato? Before you are sealed by the sword of Totsuka possessed by my Susanoo." The Rouge Uzumaki sighed and smiled, looking at the sky before looking at Naruto. "Yes, actually, Naruto, could you come over here for a second?" he asked. Naruto looked at Itachi uncertainly. The Uchiha nodded and Naruto walked over to his family, stopping in front of him. Nagato smiled at him before reaching out and grabbing the crow off of Naruto's shoulder and ripping out Shisui's eye. Before grabbing the Uzumaki heir's head and smiling as he placed the eye near Naruto's now vacant eye socket. "I can't give you back your old eye, but I can give you this one, if you would like it, Naruto," the former terrorist asked. Naruto looked taken back. He could see out of his right eye again. He had already given up on ever doing that again. "What do you think, Itachi?" Nagato asked, smiling at the freed Uchiha. Itachi gave a small smirk in return. "Accepted, Naruto, inherit my, Shisui's and Nagato's wills. Your parents Namikaze Minato and Uzumaki Kushina, you are their living legacy. Accept Shisui's Sharingan and become ours as well. You will be the light we three leave behind in the darkness," the Uchiha said in a kind tone. Nagato smiled and Naruto felt his mouth dry up. Become their living legacy? What the hell were they thinking? "Come on guys, there has to be a better person for the job. I'm sure I'll screw something up." Nagato and Itachi looked at him like he was crazy. "Naruto," Itachi started. "I murdered my entire clan for the sake of Konoha, sparing only my little brother, who is now walking down a path of darkness and could well destroy the leaf." Itachi finished lamely, sounding a little ticked off at admitting his failure. "As for me, in case you don't remember, I created an organization that ended up being ruled by a madman that has a fairly good chance at actually achieving world domination. I don't think you can screw up worse than we already have." Nagato finished lamely. Naruto just stared at them both in amazement. They were actually admitting that. "But I mean, IB had enough at this point and smacked Naruto upside the head. Listen and listen clear, fool, cause Killer B is here, so let's make this clear right here. They want you to be a legacy, I say you let him have you. They want you, they need you, so why don't you stop Clowin and start pausing playa?" The Hachibi Jinchuriki rapped at his younger counterpart. The three others just looked at him strangely. Naruto found a Susanoo hand holding him in place as Nagato reached out to his eye socket. "Here, this should heal you up and give you your chakra back." The Uzumaki smiled as he placed the eye inside Naruto's eye socket, who was held far too tightly to dislodge himself from the construct's grip. The man who once called himself God ran through some hand seals gem. Rin Tensei no Jutsu. Naruto felt the eye fuse into his head. Surprisingly, it didn't hurt. He smiled at the man in front of him as he began to disappear. "Naruto, if your A was the first book in the trilogy, then it was a great one. However, myself as the second, it was horrible. You, Naruto, you're the third and final book of our story. Make it so good that everyone forgets the trash that the second book was. You, Naruto, are the bridge to peace and my living legacy. I counting on you, kid." Nagato finished just as the sealing was completed and he vanished for the final time. Naruto turned to Itachi Sharingan in his right eye, its tome spinning slowly. "Well, what are we waiting for? Let's go." Flashback end. Naruto smiled at the memory. Surprisingly, it wasn't a painful one. Nagato had entrusted his dream to his younger counterpart and passed on with a smile. Naruto could be satisfied with that, not happy but satisfied at least. He looked up to see his three genin standing in front of him, along with the client. "What took you guys so long?" Naruto asked, looking at them. His genin sweat dropped as one. Sensei Kushina ventured, smiling a little at the memory. "We've been here for almost 20 minutes already. We tried calling you a few times, but you just didn't react." Naruto rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. Sorry about that, I was think about some old memories. He said, giving them a smile. Mikoto's interest was piqued by that statement. What kind of memories? She asked innocently. None of the assembled genin or the man they had been hired to escort missed the flash of sadness that flicked over Naruto's face. But it was gone so quickly they almost thought they imagined it. Naruto shrugged. Does it really matter at the moment, Mikoto-san? At any rate, you must be Hibi-san, he said, addressing the older man with graying hair behind his genin team. The man nodded in answer to Naruto's question. Okay then, just a few things we need to thrash out then before we leave. He said cheerfully, pulling out the mission scroll. You wanted protection from bandits and highwaymen. As such, you requested a C-ranked mission from Konoha. We are to take you to Senmei village in Kawa no Kuni. Is all this correct? Naruto asked. The man nodded. Indeed it is, but I have to ask, why did you feel the need to ask? Naruto shrugged, before smiling at his genin. Well, it was more for my genin than me, just so they understood the parameters of the mission and what you had asked for. I admit I could have just briefed them as we walked, but I like to ask the client these kind of questions. Once or twice I have had people deliberately mislabel missions because they couldn't pay the fee. It almost got me and my team killed more than once. So now I do this and try to see if you're lying or not. Personally, I wouldn't care if you were, if it was just me. But I've got to look out for genin too now, so I have to be a little more careful. Naruto finished. The man looked at him for a second before nodding and walking out the gate. Naruto looked back at his genin. So what are you waiting for exactly? Let's get going, shall we? They didn't need to be told twice and ran after the client. Naruto chuckled and jogged after them. All three of them seemed so eager. Naruto wondered if Sasuke, Sakura and he were the same way when they first started. Danzo looked at the root agent at his feet. The QB Jinchuriki has left the village. He asked, making sure he knew the full situation before he acted. The root agent nodded. Hi Danzo-sama, the Jinchuriki was spotted leaving the village at 9:30 this morning. In the company of Uchiha Mikoto and Senju Nawaki, the Jinchuriki's teammates. As well as their Jonin instructor and Uzugakure shinobi called Murakami Naruto. Danzo looked intrigued at that piece of news. Sarutobi is letting an outsider train our weapon? He asked the man bowing before him. The man nodded. Hi Danzo-sama, to make matters worse, we cannot find anything about this man. He was instated as an Uzumaki Jonin only a week before he arrived to be the Jinchuriki sensei. Before that, there are no records of this individual, nor any records of why he would be trusted with such a high priority mission. The agent finished. Danzo sat back on his chair deep in thought. Send a seal master, or at least as close as we have, after the Jinchuriki's team. Tell them to keep their distance and ambush them on the way back to Konoha. The Senju heir shows no signs of being able to use the Mokuton. He is expendable. The third daughter of the Uchiha clan head and the Jinchuriki are to be captured and subdued, ready for emotional conditioning. Their Jonin sensei is to be killed. A random element like that is far too dangerous to be left alone. He commanded. The agent bowed. Of course Danzo-sama, we will be the roots that hold up the great tree. The agent said, bowing to his master. Naruto sighed. Something was going to go horribly wrong, he could just feel it. The mission had been a complete success. Client safely delivered, money paid, free 3-day vacation that his students were all too happy to take paid for by him. Naruto figured that with the hellish training that he had put them through, they deserved some time off and no one was going to know. Naruto would just say the man stopped off at a couple of towns on the way, no harm done. It was exactly that had him worried. He couldn't go on one mission without something going horribly wrong. Be it bandits, jutsu thieves, people raising the dead and one-time jutsu thieving vampire bandits, that kind of shit does not happen to normal people. Yet this was going off without a hitch, and that worried him. Ashina looked back at her sensei, who was bringing up the rear of the group. She wasn't sure why, but she had this small ache in her chest. It started when she saw him flirting with that female cook in the restaurant they ate at. She didn't know why this feeling was there. What the hell was wrong with her? Naruto sighed. He could feel the trap up ahead if whoever set this up was good. If he had been just about anyone else, it probably would have worked. But he wasn't anyone else. Naruto was a veteran of the 4th Shinobi War, the shortest and bloodiest of all 4 wars, spanning 2 years in total. But the grand total of almost 33,000 casualties out of the original 50,000 shinobi in the allied forces. He'd been dodging traps better than this one in his sleep for years. Naruto pumped chakra to his legs and disappeared in a burst of speed to appear in front of his genin, holding his arm out to stop them. Formation 3 defensive positions, attack the enemy with deadly force. He yelled at them. The 3 confused genin quickly assembled themselves back to back. Naruto turned his attention to the forest ahead. You have 2 choices, come out or I smoke you out. Naruto yelled. No answer was forthcoming. The blonde shrugged, his hands blurred. Finishing on a tiger seal, Mikoto's eyebrow raised. Her sensei could use Kaiten Jutsu. Kaiten. Gurka no Jutsu. The dragon-headed flame projectile roared towards the tree line, causing the ground under it to warp and melt with its heat. before connecting with the trees and exploding, turning the forest into a raging inferno. Naruto didn't bother to observe his handiwork, he was more focused on the 7 Anbu that dropped out of the trees. Now what are 7 root members doing here? Tell me, has the old Warhawk really decided to have me eliminated? The 7 didn't say anything and settled for charging, Naruto smirked. He leaned back, allowing the cut of the tanto in the root member's hand to go harmlessly above him, his own kunai burying itself deep into the man's gut. He tugged the weapon free and threw it over to his left hand, spinning he planted the kunai in the back of another root Anbu's skull as he tried to run past. Naruto smiled, jumping back and pulling out a single shuriken and throwing it. Futon. Shuriken Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. A single shuriken become 20 each encased in deadly Futon chakra. Naruto smiled as he watched another 2 root members drop dead. He watched 2 more jump back. Kaiten. Nkakek no Jutsu, 2 root members yelled, expelling 2 large spheres of fire at the still smiling blonde. Suiton. Sujinheki, Naruto muttered, spitting out a torrent of water to douse the 2 fireballs. Naruto jumped back again, the blonde brought his hands into a one day to be infamous cross shape. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Both made only one hand sign. Naruto had practiced this particular combination jutsu until he could do it in his sleep. Fton. Atsugai, the original Naruto yelled, firing the attack at the unfortunate root Anbu. The clone smiled. Kaiten. Nkakek no Jutsu. The 2 root members died almost instantly. Naruto could feel the ungodly heat of the attack and hear his opponent's skin crackle as the fat ignited under the heat. Naruto rolled his neck, well, that was easy. A scream came from behind him, another root Anbu was making off with Kushina. Naruto gritted his teeth, not tucking happening, the race through 3 hand seals, ox, rabbit and monkey. The Chidori actually consisted of 9 hand seals, but a master of the attack could cut that time down by 2/3. The chakra gathered around his hand, wide and luminous, he lowered himself like a sprinter waiting for the go signal. The ever-familiar sound of 1,000 birds chirping filled the air. Naruto looked up at the fleeing root Anbu. Chidori, the blonde, screamed to the sky and dashed forward, passing his students almost instantly, the Chidori in his hand tearing up the ground. Naruto activated his Sharingan, he closed 4 meters, 3, 2, 1. His left hand went out and grabbed Kushina, throwing her off the root member's shoulder, his right hand came forward and tore right through the man's chest. The root operative looked down, his body was shredded. A gaping hole in his chest right over his lungs that still contained Naruto's hand. The blonde closed his eyes, allowing the Sharingan to leave them before looking back at his genin. "You alright?" he asked, looking at Kushina. The red-haired girl shook for a moment before crying and burying her face in his chest. Naruto just held her and let her cry her troubles away. He recognized the insignia on the Anbu masks. Root, Danzo would pay for this. Danzo would pay dearly, more importantly he would die, slowly. Naruto stroked Kushina's hair and whispered kind and reassuring words to her. The girl's shaking seemed to stop until she looked at the carnage around them. Kushina held her hands over her mouth and sprinted over to the bushes. Currently occupied by Nawaki and Mikoto, and began throwing up with them. Naruto sighed, he had a lot of work to do. He quickly substituted a log in the clearing for a model cow. The terrified cry of cow filled the clearing and all 3 of his genin jumped out. Naruto sighed, morons, they hadn't even checked for explosive tags. Not that it mattered, there were none on that cow. He smiled at his genin. Well, time to go home, boy and girls, onward. He said, smiling and walking away. Boom. The clearing behind them was leveled and more than 10 trees were destroyed by the blast. Okay, maybe he had been wrong about those explosive tags after all. Kushina ran up to walk beside Naruto and was soon joined by Nawaki and Mikoto. Looked like none of them were used to seeing death. Naruto gritted his teeth, he would make Danzo pay. Naruto almost sighed in relief when he saw the gates of Konoha come into view. His genin had refused to be without him for more than 5 minutes for the last 3 days, 3 tucking days. He needed space, goddammit, the blonde Uzumaki sighed, stupid Danzo, his blood boiled. The Warhawk would pay. Still, it was the first time they had seen anybody killed, so he was more than ready to cut them some slack. Naruto walked over to the shack meant for arrivals to check into. Team 5 back from a C-turned-A rank mission. He said nonchalantly, looking at the gate guards before his eyes bulged out of his head. Sitting there looking at him in utter amazement were Izumo and Kotetsu. Naruto felt his breath hitch. Those 2 had died in the first 6 months of the war and died like heroes. The 2 Chunin were far more skilled than they had ever let on. Taking down 2 full battalions of white Zetsu before dying. Naruto had turned up too late to save them, but the 2 eternal gate guards, as they were called, had killed every invading Zetsu before dying. Both had smiles on their faces when their bodies were found. Izumo, Kotetsu? Naruto asked, sounding shaken. Mikoto looked at him oddly. Naruto never looked shaken. The 2 guards gathered their thoughts. Sorry, you got the wrong guys, my name's Mimo and this guy's Kaumo. The Izumo lookalike gave him a quick once-over. But Izumo and Kitetsu are our sons' names, how did you know that? Naruto placed a hand on the back of his head and rubbed it sheepishly, holy hell, what were the odds? Sorry, but I had no idea those were your sons' names. You guys just reminded me of two people I met called Izumo and Kitetsu. Naruto said, smiling brightly. The two men nodded in understanding. I just hope our kids don't turn out like us. Mimo sighed. Got that right, they call the two of us the Eternal Gate Guards. Kamo lamented before sighing as well. Naruto couldn't help it, he burst out laughing. Signing the entrance book, he walked away, Genin in tow, chortling all the while. When they arrived in the center of Konoha, Naruto turned back to his 3 charges. Okay, then I just have to go and give the mission report to the Hokage, and the money will be deposited into your accounts. With the appearance of those fake Anbu, the mission will be classified as a high B to low A in rank, so there will be more put in than you were expecting. Last but not least, don't mention our little vacation or we will all get in trouble. Just pass it off as we stayed for 2 days with a client at Tsunade because he wanted to gamble. Most if not all should buy that excuse, and those that don't will probably find it too much trouble to get truth out of you. Dismissed. Naruto finished smiling at his genin, Nawaki, and Mikoto nodded and walked off, though they still looked uncertain about leaving. Kushina, he noted, stayed behind for some reason. Something you need, Kushina? Naruto asked his miniature mother student. The redhead nodded, a small blush on her face. Could I come with you? She asked in a small voice. Naruto considered it for a second. On one hand, this could get ugly quickly, on the other, Nawaki and Mikoto had family to help them get used to things like seeing people killed and killing others. Kushina had no one, at least not in Konoha. She would probably feel better being near someone she knew. Naruto scratched the back of his head. Oh hell, why not? Fine, it's hopefully going to be boring though. He advised the redhead. That's fine. Naruto nodded and gestured for her to follow. But sensei, what happens if it's not boring? Kushina asked in an innocent tone. Naruto smirked. Well then I guess things will be very, very interesting, then won't they? The redhead nodded, not quite understanding. Before walking after the blonde Jonin as he made his way to the tower. Naruto gave the Hokage's secretary a lazy wave. Yo, Jonin Narukami, Naruto, here to report a successful mission. Is the old monkey in for me to see? Naruto asked as politely as he could. The secretary's eyes widened and Kushina's mouth dropped open. What kind of person called the Hokage an old monkey? Sorry Naruto-san, but he is in a meeting with the joint councils right now. The secretary replied, still not quite over the way he referred to the Hokage. Naruto's smile turned sadistic and Kushina shivered. She knew that smile, the same one was on his face before he started throwing model cows covered in explosives at them. When he had that smile on, things never ended well. Is Shimura Danzo in this meeting? Naruto inquired. The secretary nodded and Naruto gave her a flirtatious grin before taking her hand and kissing it. Thank you for that wonderful news, Tenshi-san. He said, smiling coyly at the secretary who seemed to be enjoying the treatment. Kushina felt a small pang of pain in her heart. Naruto quickly righted himself, smiling at the secretary. What room if you please, Tenshi-san? Room 74, straight up the steps and 4th door on your left on the 3rd floor. Naruto nodded to the woman and walked up the steps, Kushina following closely behind. He sighed, looking at the door to the meeting room before taking out a storage scroll and smiling. Naruto turned to Kushina, his previously cheerful expression gone. Kushina, if anything happens, stay behind me, okay? He doubted it would, but this was Danzo he was about to piss off. Naruto was not taking chances. The Uzumaki heiress nodded, a slightly worried expression on her face. Naruto turned around, looked at the door for a second before shrugging. Then pulled his leg back and kicked the door off its hinges. Kushina's jaw made close acquaintance with the floor. Who the hell did things like that? The door crashed through the room, embedding itself in the wall opposite. The Hokage stared at the doorway, currently housing a very angry-looking Narukami Naruto. All his time spent with the young man, the blonde had always been laughing and joking, but now his face and more importantly his eyes looked as cold as ice. Naruto stalked into the room, an Anbu operative charged, his sword aiming for Naruto's neck. The blonde had a kunai out and coated in Futon Chakra before anyone could blink. Severing the sword near the guard, while spinning before planting his elbow in the Anbu's face, shattering his mask, the man went down hard. A second operative dropped from behind, Naruto's leg hooked up, catching the dull edge of the ninjato with his heel. The pushing it off onto a different angle and clotheslining the unfortunate Anbu. The Anbu met the floor with such force his head actually cracked the concrete. The blonde Uzumaki continued his walk forward like nothing had ever happened, pulling out a scroll and throwing it in front of the Hokage. Sarutobi-san, you have exactly 10 seconds to tell me why my team was attacked by Konoha Anbu. The Hokage looked at him strangely. What do you mean, Naruto-san? The blonde looked angry. When my team was returning from their mission to Kawa no Kuni, we were attacked by 7 men wearing Anbu masks, carrying the emblem of Konoha. Along with the insignia for Router Northeast on their masks, I killed the attackers, but I cannot overlook the threat that these men pose to my students. So tell me why an organization attached to Konoha attacked my students, or so help me, I will bring this tower down around your ears. Naruto hissed the last part out. He was angry at Danzo beyond all belief right now. But he couldn't go straight for the old warhawk until he had more than circumstantial evidence, so he would settle for making his life harder. The old Sarutobi looked at the blonde council forgotten. This had Danzo written all over it, though he did doubt that he would ever actually be able to prove that. Do you have any proof of this, Naruto-san? The blonde nodded, pointing to the scroll in front of the Hokage. Inside that contains the masks of 5 of the 7 operatives. I destroyed 2 of them with an attack and a sample of their blood, so you can run a cross-reference for it. Now tell me why my team was attacked by Konoha Shinobi Sarutobi. Naruto yelled the last word at the aging leader, who took it stoically. It was well within the young man's rights to be more than a little angry after all. Naruto-san, I do not know anything about this, however I can and will look into it. As Root was supposedly shut down on my orders, of that I can assure you. Naruto gave a brief nod before sighing and bowing to the Hokage. I am sorry for interrupting your council meeting, Sarutobi-sama, but I take threats to my students very seriously. Naruto sighed and looked back up at the old man before smiling and turning to walk out. Boy! Came the yell from the shinobi portion of the council, from a man with short black hair and coal-black eyes. Yes? Naruto asked, sounding clearly annoyed. The man bristled with indignation. I am the head of the Uchiha clan, you will show me respect. The man snapped at him. Naruto gave him a sarcastic grin in return. Did you say something? Sorry, but you can have respect when you earn it. He drawled back, getting a warm feeling in his chest while feeling incredibly lazy. He knew this feeling. Kakashi was proud of him for some reason or another. The Uchiha clan head looked like he was about to blow a gasket at Naruto's remark. You little bastard, an Uchiha was supposed to teach your squad, did you know that? You should not be teaching my daughter or the heiress of the Uzumaki. It is a travesty for any but an Uchiha to teach another Uchiha. Naruto had enough of the man's rant and threw a kunai at the screaming Uchiha, who couldn't move quite fast enough and ended up with a cut cheek. Listen and listen closely, because I will not repeat myself. I do not care who you are or where you're from or what birthed you, Uchiha. Naruto snarled at the clan leader. The entire room, stunned at the blonde's outburst, stayed silent. If you have a tucking problem with me, then you sure as hell better be able to back it the tuck up. Naruto picked the Uchiha clan head up by the shirt and slammed him against the wall. The entire council was gaping at him. No one had ever done something like this before. Naruto let the Uchiha clan head go and turned to walk out, gesturing to a stunned Kushina. So I had better be able to back it up, huh? Came the voice from behind him. Naruto turned to see the Uchiha clan head staring at him with barely restrained hatred. An untested boy like you having an Uchiha and the heiress to the Uzumaki on your squad is a travesty. I challenge you for that right. Naruto looked at the Uchiha for a second before snapping his neck to each side. So what are the terms? Naruto asked lowly, his anger simmering below the surface. The Uchiha clan head smiled. Simple. If I win a sparring match against you, then you have to hand leadership of your squad over to the Uchiha clan as a collective. Naruto beeped his head to the side and nodded. And when I win? The Uchiha leader burst out laughing. You won't win, boy, but if by some miracle you do, then I will grant you one request that the Uchiha clan as a whole has to honor. Naruto smiled. Oh yes, that would be more than handy. Well then, if you don't mind, I will make my prize known now. The Uchiha nodded dismissively. If I win, then I want all of the Uchiha clan's collective knowledge of Kaiten Jutsu in such a form that it can be read without the use of a Sharingan. The council looked floored at his deceleration. The clan leaders had their eyes bulging out of their heads at the gift he wanted from the Uchiha clan. Those scrolls contain Uchiha only jutsu. I cannot just allow you to have them. The Uchiha clan head growled out. True. Naruto admitted, before smirking. However, in case like this where it's the result of a bet or a challenge like you have just presented me with, those rules are waived and I would be able to make full use of those techniques, even if they were supposed to be restricted to the Uchiha clan. Naruto finished smugly, his smile becoming bloodthirsty. The Uchiha clan head snarled at the blonde. Fine, I agree to your terms. The date for our match will be tomorrow at noon. Training ground 5, the council will be in attendance as mediators for our match. Naruto nodded, smiling before walking out of the room, Kushina trailing behind. Here is inside. Now he had to replace that door. Why him? Sensei, was that really a good idea? Kushina asked, sounding worried. Naruto smiled down at the redhead. Sure, it was, Kushi-chan, always a good idea to take a bet you won't lose. Naruto said proudly, missing the blush on Kushina's face at his way of calling her. The Uchiha in there is nothing like your friend Makoto. He's just someone who over-relies on their Kekkei Genkai to win their fights, rather than using it as a trump card like you're supposed to. Naruto muttered the last bit. Sensei, with the way you're talking it sounds like you have a Kekkei Genkai. Kushina said, laughing. Naruto thought about it for a second. That's because I do. Naruto admitted, sighing. Kushina looked up at him in slight amazement. But when you fought those Anbu in the office, or the ones that attacked us, I didn't see you use anything that looked like a Kekkei Genkai. Naruto smiled at her, before ruffling Kushina's hair. I did use it in that fight outside the village, I just made sure that you guys didn't see it. But for the most part I try not to. My Kekkei Genkai is a trump card to get me out of really bad situations. Not, as most people who have one would tell you, the first solution to any problem. Naruto admitted, rubbing the back of his head in a sheepish manner. At any rate, do you feel okay now? Kushina looked down. She wasn't okay, not yet. But she could cope, of that she was sure. I'll be fine, sensei. The Uzumaki heiress assured him. Naruto smiled at her. Tell Nawaki and Mikoto to be at training ground 5 at noon tomorrow, okay? I think it should be okay for you guys to sit in on this fight. Kushina nodded and turned away, before stopping and turning back. Sensei, what Kekkei Genkai do you have? Kushina asked, sounding a little apprehensive. Naruto didn't answer, instead opting to just turn around, and Kushina came face to face with two fully mature Sharingan eyes. Kushina was almost bouncing off the walls. In fact, Naruto was quite sure that if training ground 5 had any walls, she would have been. Naruto sighed. The bastard was already 10 minutes late. He remembered Sasuke's stunt at the Chunin exams, typical tucking Uchiha. The assembled council was starting to look a little annoyed. Well, at least that was something. For once Naruto wasn't the only person pissed off with the Uchiha. Naruto took a brief look at his students. Nawaki looked bored, Kushina exited, and Mikoto nervous, for him or for her father he wasn't sure. Naruto threw a look over his shoulder and whistled. It seemed like the whole of the Uchiha clan had turned out for this little fight. Okay, that was an exaggeration, but there were at least 100 of them, Naruto sighed. Glad you could finally join us, Uchiha-san. Naruto called out, smiling at the look of anger on the Uchiha clan head's face at the informal address. You will show me respect, boy. Clan head yelled out. Naruto sighed. Like I said before, respect is earned, not given. Oh, by the way, I never got your name. Naruto said, yawning. The man puffed out his chest. Uchiha Kauken. Clan head of the Uchiha. The man took a taijutsu stance, and Naruto yawned. Well then, are we all ready? Naruto asked, sliding into his own stance. The current Hyuga clan head walked into the space between them. Uchiha Kauken versus Narukami Naruto, Hajime. He swung his arm up, jumping backwards. The man got the feeling he did not want to be in the middle of this. Naruto blurred forward as the Uchiha activated his Sharingan. Naruto's fist came forward and was pushed away. A leg came at his abdomen. Naruto sweeped it out of the way, jumping to deliver an axe kick to the clan head. He saw the Kuwani position to stab him and changed his attack, letting the sole of his foot land on Kauken's arm and pushing off into a jump. Naruto twisted in midair and threw a shuriken at the Uchiha, one coated in Futon Chakra. The Uchiha leaned back and allowed the attack to pass over his head. Smirking right up until Naruto buried his foot in the man's stomach, sending him flying. The entire exchange took less than 10 seconds. The Uchiha flipped himself in midair before blurring through hand seals. Kaiten. Nkakuk no Jutsu. Naruto smirked and slammed his hands together. Ninpo Kekkai. Tengaim Jin. The barrier sprang up, holding back the flames. Naruto wanted to end this quickly. Oh, Kauken was good, he would give the man that, but Naruto was an S-rank shinobi. Kauken was a low to mid-air rank. There was a reason most S-rank shinobis didn't work together. It was because you actually had to be an S-class to fight an S-class. You were that strong you didn't need to work as a team. Naruto decided to end it. The Uchiha clan head charged forward. Naruto smirked, chakra gathering in his hand. He pushed it faster and faster, making it more condensed, more concentrated, until he was holding the heart of a storm in his hand. Kauken lashed out with a fist. Naruto caught the offending limb and dragged the man in closer, slamming the spinning orb of chakra into his gut. Rasengan. The attack ripped through the clan head's clothes and skin, before pulverizing his bones and shattering most of his ribcage. Kauken was flung back, impacting with a tree before going through it, and the four behind that one. Naruto turned to his team. He won't be getting back up from that. Take the next 3 days off and meet back here on Monday. The three just nodded, not trusting their voices. All three's jaws were firmly acquainted with the floor. Naruto turned to the Uchiha elders. I'll expect my winnings in 3 days. Naruto said pointedly, before walking off, leaving a stunned crowd. Naruto walked back to Konoha at a lazy pace, whistling all the way. Naruto let his body sway backwards as Mikoto's kick flew over him. The blonde reached up, grabbing the leg, before pivoting and throwing the black-haired girl at Nawaki. The Senju heir's eyes went wide as he saw the Uchiha flying towards him. He abandoned the hand seals he had been making and got ready to catch the girl. The Kodo hit the Senju with close to bone-shattering force, sending both of them flying. Naruto felt the ground under him rumble and jumped, deliberately leaving his arms hanging low. A pair of chains erupted from the earth, snaking around his outstretched limbs. The blonde smiled as he spotted Kushina, who was smirking at him triumphantly. "I got you, sensei." The redhead declared. Naruto sported a smirk of his own, and Kushina's blood ran cold. "You know, Kushi-chan, there is a difference between catching someone and me allowing you to catch me," Naruto stated. The redhead looked confused before Naruto gripped the chakra chains and swung them with all his might. Kushina's eyes widened with horror as she was lifted from the ground by the force of Naruto's swing, and she found herself flying through the air. Naruto smirked before slamming the unfortunate Uzumaki into her teammates, sending all three of them flying as the chains dissipated from the impact. Naruto leaped onto a tree branch which was overlooking the three downed genin before leaping into the air. He rushed through the 7 seals with a speed that only a veteran could. Horse, tiger, ram, monkey, boar, horse, tiger. Naruto inhaled deeply, air saturating his lungs. Kitten. "Nkakuk no jutsu," Naruto yelled, expelling the orb of flame from his mouth. The attack raced at the genin. Makoto looked up at the fireball racing towards Kushina, Nawaki and her. It was at least 3 body lengths across and 4 high. She could hear water running behind them. Her sensei must have dumped them there for them to be able to defend. Makoto was about to begin her hand seals when she realized the defense she was planning wouldn't work. Her defense Suiton. Mizurappa wouldn't cut it. Her sensei was smart, scary smart. He would have to know that her first defense would be Mizurappa. The jutsu was only a C rank, but would defeat the fireball. That was when it clicked. The trap was the fireball. Mizurappa would put out the fire, but then what? Makoto's eyes widened. It would leave a large amount of water in front of them, something a skilled opponent, such as her sensei, could take advantage of. Probably by sending the water back at them with a photon. To top it, then electrifying it with a Raiden changed her plan of defense. Mizurappa would not work, it left too much water in front of them, so she just needed the water to be spread out enough that her sensei couldn't take advantage of that fact. Makoto's hands blurred. She saw Kushina and Nawaki doing the same in her peripheral vision. She just hoped they all had the same idea. Suiton. Sujinheki, all 3 genin announced, spraying a huge volume of water from their mouths. Sujinheki was a B-rank Suiton ninjutsu, so it would defeat the fireball in both nature type and in ninjutsu rank, but more importantly, it forced the water away from the 3 with such force, their sensei wouldn't be able to send it back at them. Naruto smiled as he saw the water wave crush the fireball, sending upwards, a giant gout of steam. The Jonin smiled. That had been some good thinking by all 3 of them. The Sujinheki prevented him from turning the jutsu back at them, and with the force the water was launched with, allowed them a means to counterattack as well. They were getting better. Naruto jumped and stuck to the underside of a branch, smiling at his genin's progress. Their ability to attack and defend at the same time was impressive, but they really should have thought ahead a bit more, after all. With all of the steam hanging around the battlefield right now, he could easily pull off a sneak attack. The 3 should have dispersed the steam with a futon technique the moment the fireball was put out. Still, for a bunch of genin that was more than passable, Naruto smirked as he held his hands up. Kurigakur no jutsu, with all the steam his team would not be able to tell the difference. The mist mingled with the steam, making it harder to see. The blonde stayed silent as he crept toward his genin over the branches. Kushina looked around. Was it just her or was the steam getting denser? Her eyes widened. Oh shit, Kurigakur no jutsu. The redhead blurred through hand seals. She wasn't really one for ninjutsu, but her sensei had forced her to become at least proficient in the art. Photon. To top it, the young Uzumaki yelled at the top of her lungs, the wind technique pushing the combined mist and steam away. Kushina whirled looking for her teammates, her eyes widened. Nawaki was already on the ground out cold, and Naruto was right behind Makoto. Makoto. Yelled Kushina in warning. Naruto's hand descended, and the Uchiha's eyes rolled into the back of her head as she was rendered unconscious. Naruto blurred out of Kushina's sight. The Uzumaki heiress felt a stinging sensation before everything went dark. Naruto looked down at the fallen figures of his 3 students. They were getting better. Not quite ready to survive the hell that was war, but they were getting better. Naruto wasn't even sure that he would ever feel that his genin were ready to face war. He had gotten far too attached to them to even want to consider them put onto a battlefield. Naruto knew the horror of war. The 3rd Shinobi War was coming. The blonde knew that. Naruto just hoped that he had a bit longer before he had to put his students to the test in that hell. The blonde picked Kushina up in a bridal carry while creating 2 clones for Nawaki and Makoto. Naruto took to the trees, jumping back towards the entrance to training ground 5, Konoha. The blonde hadn't really spent much time around the village. He was always either training to improve his own skills, training his genin, or taking missions. Besides, he knew the layout and the families well enough that Naruto didn't really need to spend much time inside Konoha. The Naruto's laid his genin team down of the soft grass at the entrance to the training blonde side. They did good. Nawaki had a good feeling for ninjutsu and was above average at taijutsu, though he did need to learn not to rely on his clan's form so much. Things like that would make him over-specialized and rigid, like the Hyuga. Naruto would not let that happen to one of his students. Next was Mikoto. The girl showed a strong aptitude for ninjutsu, then again that was something he expected from an Uchiha, but also for Genjutsu. Naruto couldn't use Genjutsu though he could break just about all of them, so the blonde really wasn't much help there. He had made a mental note to ask around the village for a Genjutsu user so he could ask them to train Mikoto, but Naruto wanted to get her above the genin norm first. Finally there was Kushina. The redhead was definitely not a ninjutsu user. It wasn't that she was bad at using ninjutsu per se, but rather that in comparison to her other strengths, her talent with ninjutsu was negligible at best. Not that Naruto hadn't pounded the basics of several jutsu into the Uzumaki's head, Kushina may have not held a great amount of talent for the art. But Naruto would not let her neglect her training in the art just because of that. That being said, the girl's aptitude for Tai and Kenjutsu was amazing, in addition to that the redhead was always getting better with those chains of hers. Naruto had not yet started teaching Kushina the art of the sword in earnest just yet, preferring to bring her other forms up to scratch first. That being said, what he saw when he did train her was amazing. The girl was a wonder with a sword just waiting to be discovered. Naruto guessed that was something he had inherited from his mother, a love of blade work. The blonde looked up at the sky and sighed. It had been almost 2 months since his match against Kaken, and since then the Uchiha clan would not leave him alone. They were trying, and quite desperately, to get Naruto under their thumb. Trying everything from bribing him to offering marriage contracts. At one point a contract for Mikoto herself was offered to the blonde. Hell, the Uchiha clan offered to adopt him as one of their own. Naturally Naruto turned them down. He was in Uzumaki to the bone. Even if he wasn't using the name, he would not be joining another clan unless it was by marriage, and even then it would not be for a political marriage. His students had also not stopped hounding him over the Rasengan. Naruto knew he shouldn't have used the attack. After all, his father had been made famous for creating it, along with the Harem no Jutsu. Naruto really hoped he hadn't screwed up the timeline too badly with that little stunt. Though knowing that because of his luck, that was probably a vain hope. He looked down at his genin. They were ready. Well, he had been working the group's basic skills and teamwork over the last 2 months. That wasn't all he was doing. Every now and then Naruto would throw something different at the three, such as a lesson in Fuinjutsu or Kinjutsu. Just to see the kind of aptitude the genin had in that area. Anytime they excelled, Naruto filed it away so he could teach them later. Now that they had the basics and teamwork above genin level, Naruto was ready to start teaching them some new skills. The blonde knew that Nawaki and Mikoto's families were teaching them on the side, so the blonde planned to pay some more attention to Kushina. Not that he would neglect their training, only that Naruto would allow a little more freedom to Kushina in what she learned. For example, when the members of his genin team met, they did so every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday and Sunday. The other 2 days they had off. Naruto knew for a fact that Mikoto and Nawaki's families trained them in their family arts on these days. Naruto would extend the same offer to Kushina. Since there were no Uzumaki in Konoha besides her, Naruto would offer the redhead some extra training on the days off so that she wouldn't feel left behind when the Uchiha and Senju started upping Mikoto and Nawaki's training in the clan's arts. Something that Naruto suspected they would do soon as the two were starting to show a lot of growth as ninja and as people. The blonde heard a groan and looked down as Nawaki woke up. "What the hell hit me?" the Senju heir asked blearily. Naruto smiled. The Senju reminded him a lot of himself when he was younger. He had reflected on that in private once. He suspected it was that resemblance that had gotten Tsunade to come back to Konoha. "That would be me, Nawaki-kun," Naruto said, smiling down at the brown-haired boy, who looked at Naruto for a second before sighing. "Knocked us unconscious again, eh, sensei?" the Senju said with a small chuckle. This was how all their spars ended after all. Rather than try to beat the blonde, the three genin used it as a test to see how long they could survive for. Naruto nodded at the genin's statement before smiling at his young charge. "You guys did really well. 2 months ago you couldn't last more than 10 minchus against me at that level, now you're up to 45. Naruto said, praising the Senju heir and his teammates, who were still unconscious. Nawaki blushed slightly under the blonde's praise. Naruto always gave praise where it was due, but never when it wasn't earned. "Ah, but we still can't beat you now, can we, sensei?" Nawaki replied, smiling at the blonde. Naruto shrugged and gave a mischievous grin in return. "I wouldn't be much of a jonin if I couldn't take down 3 genin, Nawaki-kun, clan heirs or not," Naruto pointed out. The Senju beeped his head to the side for a second before nodding. The blonde had a good point. "Suo thought about teaching us that Rasengan yet?" Nawaki asked innocently. Naruto chuckled. Before bopping the Senju on the head lightly, after displaying the attack, all 3 of them had wanted to learn it. Hell, he had other jonin coming and asking if they could trade some of their own jutsu in exchange for learning it. Hell, the Hyuga had offered him marriage contract. Naturally Naruto turned them all down and went to Sarutobi and had the jutsu registered as a personal jutsu so that anyone caught copying it would be dealt with severely, not that Naruto was too worried about someone figuring out the Rasengan. The attack was just shape manipulation taken to its highest possible level after all, making it all but impossible to copy unless you already knew its inner workings, something Naruto was in no hurry to share. But something he was worried about, some people making bastardized versions of the attack, which was something the blonde would not tolerate. Not yet Nawaki-kun, maybe one day. But sensei, that's what you always tell me. The senju pouted as his attempt to gain the awesome jutsu failed miserably, just like all Kushina, Mikoto and his previous attempts did. Naruto sighed and laid back on the grass sighing, those three had come a long way. Hell, they had even completed another 12 C-rank missions, no D ranks. He had to go through that hell himself and would not make his genin do so, though the temptation to see the looks of despair on their faces as they found out they had to clean kennels for the Inuzuka or some such was oh so tempting. He saw a hawk flying above and was instantly on alert. The bird let out 3 harsh cries and flew away. Naruto stood up and looked at Nawaki. Nawaki-kun, please tell Kushina and Mikoto they can go home when they wake up. I have something I have to take care of. Naruto said, walking off. Did it have something to do with that hawk? Nawaki asked, wondering if it was some kind of signal. Naruto snorted, but on the inside he praised his student for his sharp intellect. Hell no. Naruto deadpanned to Nawaki before smiling with a perverse grin on his face. Today is the day the new Uchiha comes out. Naruto stated, drooling, before disappearing in a shunshin, not hearing Nawaki's grumble about stupid pervy senseis. The blonde reappeared inside the Hokage tower lobby, his face in a pure business expression as he walked towards the Sandai's office. The door was opened by an Anbu. Naruto nodded his thanks, the Anbu dipped his head in return. It was nice to see someone at least acknowledge that he had done something, most just ignored the Anbu when they did things like that. Naruto walked inside seeing the other jonin present. He did note Hatake Sakumo, Tsunade Senju and Jiraiya. 3 legends in one place. Naruto made a mental note to keep a close eye on Sakumo once Kakashi was born. He would make sure his white-haired sensei kept his father this time around. The Sandai scanned the room, almost all his jonin were here. His eyes fell on Naruto, the boy really was an enigma. That technique he used, a Rasengan, was incredible and he cared for his students before anything else. Yet he never walked around Konoha or got to know its people, but seemed to care for the village. But how could the young man care if he didn't know the people? The Sandai shook his head to clear it of his thoughts. He needed to focus right now. Hiruzen looked around the room again. Yes, all of the jonin senseis were here. He could start his announcement. The others it didn't really affect, they could be told later. Thank you for coming. Hiruzen stated, his eyes surveying the room again. As you all may know, in 6 months the biannual Chunin exams will be held in Konoha. Naruto's mind shut down, what the hell was going on? The Chunin exams weren't put into practice until after the Third Shinobi War. Naruto knew that as fact. Jiraiya had at least pounded some basic history into his head. He would need to consult with Akane about this changed everything. If his knowledge of the timeline was this far out, who knows what else had been changed. The Sandai continued and Naruto shook his thoughts off and paid attention. I would like the jonin senseis of all teams to come forward and please state if you will or will not be nominating your teams. Naruto, Jiraiya, Tsunade and several others stepped forward. Naruto ignored the first 3 but started paying attention again when he saw Tsunade step forward. I Senju Tsunade, jonin of Konoha, do hereby nominate Uchiha Teaki, Jinichi Ami and Khan of Team 4 for the Chunin exams as their jonin sensei. Tsunade said confidently before stepping back in line. Naruto wondered why Tsunade had an Uchiha as a student. After what Kauken had said, he honestly didn't think that he would let anyone but an Uchiha train his clan members. Then again, Tsunade was a member of the Densetsu no Sannin, proud bastard probably made an exception and allowed her the honor of teaching an Uchiha or some such. Naruto sighed and stepped forward feeling all eyes on him. The blonde sighed, what can he do? On one hand, letting his team into the exams would be a great way for them to gauge how strong they were and how far they had to go. On the other hand, they would be indisposed for a few days and miss out on training, more importantly they could die and he would not be there to save them this time. Naruto sighed, he knew what he was going to do. Kushina, Mikoto and Nawaki would kill him if he didn't nominate them. Man, he wasn't even Kushina or Mikoto's boyfriend and he already felt whipped. Now he knew what Shikamaru felt like when Naruto teased him about his relationship with Tonmari. Naruto took a deep breath. I Narukami Naruto jonin of Uzugakur do hereby nominate Senju Nawaki, Uchiha Mikoto and Uzumaki Kushina of Team 5 for the Chunin exams as their jonin sensei. Naruto stated, drawing gasps from around the room. He sighed, was this how Kakashi felt when he nominated them as rookies? Geez, you'd think that someone who could easily take apart an A-rank ninja like Kauken would have their judgment trusted, but no. Tsunade rounded on the blonde, grasping the front of his vest. "What did you just say?" The blonde asked in a low tone. Naruto just looked at her impassively. "I said I nominate my team for the Chunin exam, Senju-san. Do you have a problem with that?" Naruto asked coldly. Tsunade looked at him, fire in her eyes. "They only just graduated, they are not ready for something like this. Don't you get it, they could possibly die." Tsunade practically spat in Naruto's face, who still looked impassive. "Are you done?" The blonde asked, his voice cold enough to turn water to ice. Sundi looked at him, taken back for a second before her rage returned full force. "Hell no, I'm not done. I am not letting my little brother go off and get himself killed for your pride." Tsunade snarled at the blonde. Naruto placed his hand next to his kunai pouch, something all the jonin noted and tensed. "Senju, get your hands off me before I remove them from you." Naruto hissed at Tsunade, who seemed startled by his anger, enough so that she let go of his vest. "The moment that your little brother put on that hit I-80 so proudly wears, he became an adult. He can drink, smoke, have sex and die for his home because he wears that hit I-8. More importantly, when he put on that hit I-80 became my soldier. This is not a clan affair, nor is it something you have any control over. I am his jonin sensei, Natya Tsunade." Naruto finished and turned back to Hiruzen, who looked a little taken back by the whole scene. "As I said, Hokage-sama, I would like to nominate Team 5 for the exams." The aging Hokage nodded. Naruto's anger faded. The blonde would admit that Tsunade's anger was reasonable, but he hated seeing people underestimating his students. They had worked hard, damn it, and he would be damned if he just let other people, even if they were family, talk about his students when they had no idea of their full capabilities. Naruto tuned out as they started nominating teams again, before turning back in when Jiraiya stepped forward. "I, Jiraiya Jonin of Konoha, do hereby nominate Namikaze Minato, Hyuga Hiashi and Inyazuka Tsume of Team 7 for the Chunin exams as their Jonin sensei." The white-haired man finished and stepped back. Naruto was about to tune out again when he heard a whisper from behind him. "Figures the Namikaze clan would have their golden boy put in the exams, wonder how he'll do." Came the light voice of a jonin from behind him. Naruto's mind stopped again. Namikaze clan. His father wasn't part of a clan, only his mother was. What the hell was going on here? Was it the timeline that was out, or was it something else? No, it couldn't be the timeline. Even if the timeline was out, a little time wouldn't affect clan status. Actually no, it could. But his father was an orphan, not a clan member, and no clan called Namikaze had ever existed to his knowledge, so that just left one other option. The Kamui hadn't sent him through time, but rather through dimensions. Well, it wasn't like he hadn't thought that it was a possibility. Still, with the way everything had been going so far, Naruto had just assumed he had been sent through time instead. The blonde gulped. He needed to talk to Akane about this, and fast. Naruto's was pulled out of his thoughts as Hiruzen started to speak again. "Very well then, teams 4, 5 and 7 will be entered into this year's Chunin exams. The exams start in 6 months, have your genin ready by then. The forms for enrollment can be collected any time from now until a day before the exams. You are free to leave." The jonins nodded as one. Tsunade turned to give Naruto another piece of her mind, but found only leaves dropping to the floor as the blonde exited via Shunshin. Naruto figured he could pick up the forms tomorrow. Right now he needed to speak to Akane, and the faster the better. Kushina walked through the front door of her apartment. It wasn't a large affair. Combined kitchen, living and dining, a single bathroom and her bedroom. Compared to what she had lived in when she was in Yuzu, it was small. Not that Kushina minded, at least there was no wasted space. The redhead sighed as she collapsed down on her couch. That training session was beyond tiring, then again they always were. Naruto would push them to their breaking point, then back off, then push them to it again and again, forcing them to improve faster and faster. The blonde was a slave driver when it came to training, even though he occasionally said he was a bad teacher. Kushina didn't believe that for a second. Every lesson was easy to understand, then he expanded upon it, let them ask questions, and explained what they didn't understand before summarizing the lesson. All the time a monologue was running. When fighting, dodge, then counter. If they were sneaking, embrace the shadows. See, but don't be seen for jutsu. Feel the flow of the chakra and direct it. Never try to use a technique you don't understand. And so on. The man really did make his lessons stick, no matter what. Then there was what he focused on when they trained. Kushina was far from a stupid girl. No one would ever call her a genius, but she was no fool. When they had first graduated the academy, Mikoto, Nawaki and her had been somewhere between mid to high genin level. Now they were somewhere between low to mid chunin level. The blonde had quite literally pounded the basics into them. The moment he found even the slightest deficiency, they were drilled on it until it was perfect. Be the problem and strategy, battlefield tactics, ninjutsu, genjutsu, taijutsu, kinjutsu, hell, even fuinjutsu or assassination were drilled until their basics were perfect. But for all his training, Kushina had to ask one question about Naruto: why? None of the other genin teams were training even half as hard as they were. Sure, she could just put that down to him being a training maniac, but it felt like something more. Kushina had always trusted her instincts, and right now they were telling her there was more to her. Hell, the entire team's training the Naruto was letting on. Her musing was broken by a knock on the door. Dragging her exhausted body to the door, she flung it open. This had better be good, or else someone was going to be in pain. Kushina's eyes widened in shock when the blonde whom her thoughts had just been on stood there with a serious look on his face. "Hi sensei, what can I do for you?" Kushina asked nervously. She felt a blush creep up her face. Damn these hormones. Naruto looked distracted as he looked at his student. "Good afternoon Kushina, tomorrow's rest day has been cancelled, please meet me at training ground 5 at 6 am tomorrow." Kushina nodded and Naruto smiled down at the girl. "Make sure to take care of yourself and eat well before you arrive tomorrow, it's going to be a big day." Kushina nodded again. "Thanks sensei." The redhead said as brightly as she could in such an exhausted state. "I'll see you tomorrow then, but I have to ask what the emergency is." Naruto just chuckled. "You'll find out when you get there," the blonde stated cryptically, before turning to walk away. "You have a nice night Kushi-chan," Naruto said, walking away towards the stairs and to his apartment on the level above this one. "See ya later sensei." The Uzumaki called out to the retreating back of the blonde who just waved over his shoulder. Naruto heard the door close and felt a little bit of nostalgia as he climbed the stairs to his apartment. It seemed even when he was a child, his mother had been closer to him than he thought. After all, the apartment that Kushina was living in now was the same one that the third had given Naruto when the orphanage tried to throw him out. Naruto sat in the center of his apartment, eyes closed in the lotus position, his breathing slow and controlled. He focused on the feeling deep inside him and allowed himself to be drawn in. He felt his consciousness slipping away to somewhere else. The blonde opened his eyes, the warm noonday sun warming his body. Naruto sighed. The area inside his mind was dense woodland. The warm sun overhead and a clear lake nearby. The blonde walked forward towards the small cottage at the center of the clearing. Sure, he could have made it someplace different, but Akane had told him she actually preferred not being in her gigantic demon fox form. So she got a cottage in the middle of a clearing instead. Naruto knocked on the door. Sure, he could just walk in, but he kind of wanted to live. The door swung open, revealing a rather sleepy-looking redhead. Long and unruly hair that reached her lower back and was ruffled by her just getting out of bed, red eyes with no slit, pale skin, a tribal tattoo that stretched from her left ankle to right shoulder, marking everything in between with a flowing and interlocking web of ink. The woman had long legs and round hips, her breasts were on the smaller side looking at around a B-cup, but it really just added to her allure, crimson red lipstick, her rather pronounced canine teeth just showing. "Huh? Naru-chan. What are you doing here?" Akane asked sleepily. Naruto debated coming back later, after all Akane enjoyed her sleep. However, this really was too important to wait. "Sorry for waking you up Akane-chan, but would you mind if I came in?" Naruto asked. Akane moved aside and gestured for Naruto to come in. "That's fine Naru-chan, I'll put on some tea." Naruto just nodded. Akane had been very abrasive when they first met, but after 17 years together they eventually managed to work something out. Akane came back a few minutes later holding a teacup and setting it down in front of the blonde Uzumaki. "So Naru-chan, what did you need?" Akane asked, still looking like she wanted to go back to bed. Naruto sipped the tea for a second before sighing. He told her everything from the fact they were probably in a different dimension to that he was no longer sure how accurate their information was anymore. The demoness slowly looked more and more awake as Naruto explained. If that was because she was waking up or the subject matter was so important it made her wake up, Naruto couldn't tell. The demoness looked at him for a few minutes after he finished. "We need to plan our next move," Akane said seriously. Naruto leaned back into the chair he was sitting on. "I'm all ears." Naruto dropped in front of his genin team, the three of him looking up at him curiously. "First things first, I've entered you in the Chunin exams," Naruto stated. The three genin just looked at him for about a second before Naruto was glumped by a red blur and a black blur. Kushina and Makoto thanking him repeatedly while Nawaki just grinned like a madman. After spending the next 5 minutes prying his team off him, Naruto looked at each of them for a second. "This means naturally that I will be picking up your training as well." The three looked at him in horror when he said that. Naruto didn't even bother to acknowledge them and instead brought out 3 pieces of paper from his pouch. "Do any of you know what these are?" Naruto questioned, getting blank looks from his genin in return. "This is chakra paper. I'm going to have you guys channel your chakra into it to find out what your elemental affinity is. If it burns, it's fire, crumbles earth, crinkles lightning, gets wet water or splits, then it's wind." Naruto finished his impromptu lecture and handed out the paper. Giving the first one to Nawaki, the senju channeled his chakra into the paper and promptly yelped and dropped it as it burst into flames. Naruto smiled, a fire type, which was good. Naruto was better at both wind and lightning, but fire came in as a close third. He handed the second piece to Mikoto, who sighed. All Uchiha were fire types after all, and those who weren't were an embarrassment to the clan. She channeled her chakra and felt her mouth go dry, the paper crinkled. She was not attuned to fire, but lightning. No, this could not be happening. Mikoto started to hyperventilate. Kushian shook her friend back into the world of the living. Mikoto, what's wrong? Kushina asked concerned. Mikoto got her breathing back under control. Sensei, could I please have another piece of paper please? Naruto nodded and handed her another. Mikoto channeled her chakra again, the paper crinkled. Tears began gathering in the Uchiha's eyes. Naruto wiped them away, causing the girl to look up at her sensei, who looked down at her with something approaching sorrow in his eyes. What's wrong, Mikoto-chan? Naruto asked, concerned for his student. The girl started to tear up. I'm attuned to lighting, the girl said simply. Naruto still couldn't see the problem. The Uchiha are fire users, to be otherwise is an embarrassment to the clan. Mikoto repeated the words that had been told to her by her tutors. Naruto shook her a little and forced the girl to look at him, and Naruto smiled down at her. Well, if you think you're an embarrassment to the clan, I'm a wind user. Naruto said in a joking tone. Mikoto looked affronted. But sensei, that might be fine for you, you're not an Uchiha, but for me, they might discard me, throw me out, unless I prove to be better than a fire user. I know you're just trying to make me feel better, but please don't say things like that. Mikoto finished. Naruto sighed, looking down at Mikoto. He really hadn't wanted to tell them, at least not like this. Naruto looked sternly at his three genin. What you are about to see will be told to no one unless I expressly give you permission, am I clear? The blonde said, gaining a startled chorus of yes from his three genin. Naruto closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they were no longer the deep ocean blue the three were used to. In their place were two crimson irises slowly being circled by three tome. Naruto looked down at the two stunned genin and the smug-looking Kushina. Sensei, your eyes, Mikoto pointed out lightly. Naruto hugged the girl. See, if you're talking about outcasts in the Uchiha clan, then you really couldn't be in better company. Naruto said in a cheerful voice, smiling down at the girl who just nodded dumbly. Naruto turned his attention to Kushina, who channeled her chakra to the paper, which split in half. Naruto couldn't resist the smile that formed on his face. It was like this team was made for him, a fire, lightning and a wind user, his three best elements. Now then, we are having a training session today. It's about 6:30 now, and our training session will last until 1700, understand? The three nodded and Naruto channeled a small amount of chakra into a seal on his right arm, a katana dropping into his waiting hand. You have only one objective, survive. With those words, Naruto charged the three genin. Chapter end. Alright, that's it for today's video, guys. Let me know in the comments section how was the story, and also don't forget to like, share and subscribe. I will meet you in another video. Peace out.